They said I wasn't allowed to go past her. Then the princess grabbed my hand and said, "Run." Astor's Captain Marcus Chen stepped off the transport shuttle and felt his boots touch the crystal ground of the Zephyrian Palace. The entire landing pad was made of some kind of clear, strong material that seemed to glow with soft blue light above him. Tall spires reached toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. "Welcome to Zephyria Prime," said Ambassador Williams, a tired-looking man in his 50s. "Remember, Captain, you're here as security for our human delegation. Nothing more." Marcus nodded. He had read the mission files 3 times during the journey. Earth needed this peace treaty with the Hive Collective, and the Zephyrians had agreed to host the talks as the most powerful telepathic race in known space. They were supposed to be neutral mediators. The rules are simple. Williams continued as they walked toward the palace entrance. "Stay with our group. Don't wander off, and whatever you do, don't go near Princess Lyrale. The Zephyrians have very strict rules about that." "How strict?" Marcus asked. 50 meters minimum distance. Always. They have energy barriers set up around her at all times. Any alien who gets too close will be removed from the planet immediately. Marcus looked around as they entered the palace. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed almost transparent. Their eyes were large and completely silver. No pupils visible. They moved with smooth, flowing motions that made them look like they were dancing rather than walking. "Why are they so protective of her?" Marcus asked quietly. "She's their most powerful telepath." Williams explained. "They say she can read the true intentions of any species just by being near them. The Zephyrians believe contact with alien minds might damage her abilities." They were led through corridors filled with beautiful crystal sculptures and walls that seemed to shift color as they passed. Marcus kept his eyes moving, checking exits and security points out of habit. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what. The main negotiation hall was huge, with a high ceiling that showed the stars above through transparent crystal. 3 groups sat at different tables arranged in a triangle. The humans sat at one table, looking small and nervous. The Hive Collective delegates sat at another, their insect-like bodies covered in dark, shiny armor that clicked when they moved. At the 3rd table sat the Zephyrians, including Princess Lyrale. Marcus had seen pictures of her, but seeing her in person was different. She looked young, maybe 20 in human years, with long silver hair that seemed to move on its own. Her skin had a slight glow, and when she turned her head, Marcus could see the energy barrier around her shimmering like heat waves. "The princess will read the intentions of all parties," announced the Zephyrian Chancellor, an elderly alien with more wrinkles than the others. "She will ensure that no one speaks false words during these talks." The Hive Ambassador, a large creature with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles. "We welcome this examination. The Hive is nothing to hide." Marcus frowned. Something in the way the Hive Ambassador said that didn't sound right. He looked more carefully at the insect delegates. They sat perfectly still, which was normal for their species, but their antennae were constantly moving, like they were sensing something. The first session began with basic introductions. Each side stated their goals for the peace treaty. The humans wanted trade agreements and protection from Hive expansion. The Hive wanted access to human technology and planets for their growing population. Marcus watched Princess Lyrale during the talks. Every time the Hive delegate spoke, she seemed to tense up slightly. Her hands would grip the arms of her chair, and sometimes she would close her eyes as if fighting pain. The Zephyrians didn't seem to notice. They were too busy watching the humans and making sure no one got too close to their princess. When the session ended, Marcus stayed behind while the other humans went to their quarters. He told Williams he wanted to check the security of the building. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Marcus walked through the palace halls, memorizing the layout. He found the gardens outside the main building, where crystal trees grew in perfect rows. The light from the trees made it easy to see, even though night was falling. That's when he saw them, dark shapes moving between the trees. They were trying to stay hidden. But Marcus had military training. He knew how to spot movement in shadows. The shapes were small and quick, definitely not Zephyrians. Marcus moved closer, staying low behind a crystal fountain. The shapes became clearer. They were Hive scout drones, small robotic insects about the size of his hand. They were mapping the palace grounds, scanning everything with tiny red lights. This was wrong. The Hive delegation was supposed to be in the main building, not sending drones around the palace. And definitely not near the royal quarters. Marcus counted at least 12 drones. They were working in a pattern, checking every entrance, every window, every possible way into the palace. They were especially focused on the tower where Princess Lyrale lived. He backed away carefully and returned to his quarters. His mind was racing. The Hive was planning something, and it involved the princess. But what and why? Marcus pulled out his communication device and sent a coded message to Earth Command. He kept it simple, potential security issue, investigating. He then looked at his room's window. It faced the palace gardens, and he could see the princess's tower in the distance. Even from here, he could make out the glow of her energy barriers. The Zephyrians had told him he wasn't allowed to go near her. They said it was to protect her telepathic abilities. But what if they were wrong? What if the real threat wasn't from the aliens they were trying to keep away? Marcus settled in by the window with his field glasses. He would watch through the night. Something was going to happen, and when it did, he would be ready. Outside, the Hive drones continued their work, invisible to everyone except the one human who knew how to look for them. The princess was in danger, and Marcus was probably the only one who knew it. The next evening, Marcus dressed in his formal military uniform for the diplomatic dinner. The crystal dining hall sparkled with lights that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Long tables were arranged in a U shape, with the princess's table at the center. Marcus took his assigned seat with the human delegation. From here, he had a clear view of Princess Lyrale. She wore a flowing dress that changed colors like the aurora, and her silver hair was decorated with small crystal ornaments that caught the light. "Remember, Captain," Ambassador Williams whispered. "This dinner is very important. We need to show respect for Zephyrian customs." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the princess. The energy barrier around her was still active, creating a faint shimmer in the air. No one could get within 50 meters of her, but Marcus could still see her clearly. The Hive delegates entered the hall with heavy, clicking footsteps. Their black armor reflected the crystal lights, making them look like walking shadows. The lead ambassador carried a small box in his lower arms. As soon as the Hive delegation sat down, Marcus noticed the change in Princess Lyrale. Her relaxed posture became tense. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, and her breathing became quick and shallow. The Zephyrian Chancellor stood up to welcome everyone. "Tonight, we celebrate the progress of our peace talks. May this meal bring understanding between all our peoples." During the first course, Marcus watched the princess carefully. Every time one of the Hive delegates spoke, she would wince slightly, as if something was hurting her. She would press her fingers against her temples and close her eyes for a moment. The other Zephyrians seemed to interpret this as normal behavior. They probably thought she was just reading the Hive's thoughts and didn't like what she found. But Marcus had seen this kind of reaction before, during the war. It was what happened when someone was fighting off a mental attack. "The Hive delegation has brought a special gift," announced the Chancellor during the second course. A symbol of their desire for lasting peace. The Hive ambassador stood up, his forearms moving in what might have been a bow. "We present this token of friendship to the honored Princess Lyrale." He held up the small box. "It is a neural interface crystal, created by our finest technicians. It will allow for clearer communication between our species." Marcus felt cold. A neural interface was a device that connected directly to the brain. If the Hive wanted to control someone's mind, that would be the perfect tool. The box was placed on a floating platform that drifted toward the princess's table. As it got closer, Princess Lyrale's distress became more obvious. She was breathing hard now, and small drops of sweat appeared on her forehead despite the cool air. "The princess is honored by this gift," said the Chancellor, not noticing her condition. "She will examine it later, when she can study its telepathic properties? Marcus wanted to shout a warning, but he knew no one would listen. He was just a human security guard. The Zephyrians thought they knew what was best for their princess. After dinner, the guests moved to a large balcony that overlooked the palace gardens. Marcus stayed at the edge of the group, watching. The princess stood alone within her energy barrier, looking out at the crystal trees. Even from a distance, Marcus could see that she was troubled. The other diplomats talked and laughed, enjoying the evening air. The hive delegates stood in a tight group, their antennae constantly moving. Marcus noticed they kept looking toward the princess's tower. When the evening ended, Marcus waited until everyone had gone to their rooms. Then he made his way to the gardens. He knew he was taking a big risk, but something told him the princess needed help. Marcus found a spot in the gardens with a clear view of the princess's tower. Her room was on the top floor, with a large balcony. He could see her standing there, still in her dinner dress, looking down at the gardens. Marcus pulled out his flashlight. It was a simple device, but it could send signals. He had learned Morse code in military training, and he hoped the princess might understand it too. Many species in the galaxy use similar light patterns for basic communication. He started flashing the light in a simple pattern: danger, hive, not friends. At first, the princess didn't seem to notice. Then she turned toward his location. Marcus repeated the message several times, keeping it simple and clear. Suddenly, the princess moved to her own lights. She began flashing them in response. The pattern was different from human Morse code, but Marcus could understand the meaning. I know. They hurt my mind. Cannot tell others. Marcus sent another message. Neural interface. Trap. Do not use. The princess replied, yes, they tried to control me, but barriers protect for now. What can I do? Marcus signaled. The princess was quiet for a long moment. Then her lights flashed urgently. They planned something tonight. I feel their minds planning. The barriers will fail at midnight. They have device. Marcus felt his blood run cold. The hive had found a way to bring down the energy barriers that protected the princess. Once those were gone, they could take her. I will help. He signaled back. You cannot come close. Rules, the princess responded. Rules change when people are in danger. Marcus flashed back. There was another long pause. Then the princess sent a message that made Marcus's heart race. At midnight, they come. I will need to run. Will you help me? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes, thank you, human Marcus. Your mind is different, brave. I can sense your true intentions even from here. Marcus realized she must have been reading his thoughts somehow, despite the distance. How do you know my name? I know many things. Your thoughts are loud and clear. Most humans think loudly, but you think with purpose. It is refreshing. Stay strong. Marcus signaled. I will be ready. Be careful, the princess replied. The hive knows you watch them. They plan for you too. Marcus felt a chill. He looked around the gardens but saw nothing unusual. Still, if the princess was right, he was already in danger. See you at midnight. He signaled one last time. The princess's lights went out, and her balcony became dark. Marcus made his way back to his room, his mind racing with plans. He had a few hours to prepare for whatever the hive was planning. One thing was certain: when midnight came, he would be ready to break every rule to keep the princess safe. Marcus sat in his room, fully dressed and ready. His watch showed 11:30 p.m. He had checked his equipment 3 times: flashlight, communication device, and the small emergency knife all soldiers carried. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Outside his window, the palace gardens glowed softly with crystal light. Everything looked peaceful, but Marcus knew that was about to change. He kept his eyes on the princess's tower, watching for any sign of trouble. At 11:47 p.m., the lights went out. The entire palace was suddenly dark, even the crystal trees in the garden stopped glowing. Marcus had expected something like this, but the complete darkness was still shocking. Emergency lighting should have come on immediately, but nothing happened. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and moved to the window. In the darkness, he could see small red lights moving through the gardens. The hive drones were active again, but now there were many more of them. They moved like a swarm of angry insects, all heading toward the main palace. Then Marcus heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was a high-pitched whining noise, like metal being cut. The hive infiltration drones were cutting through the energy barriers that protected Princess Lyrale. Marcus didn't wait. He ran from his room and into the dark hallway. His flashlight beam showed crystal walls and empty corridors. Where were the Zephyrian guards? They should have responded to the power failure immediately. As Marcus ran toward the princess's tower, he heard voices echoing through the halls. The Zephyrian guards were confused and panicking. They had never dealt with a real attack before. Their security was designed to keep people away from the princess, not to fight off an invasion. Marcus reached the base of the princess's tower and started climbing the spiral staircase. The stairs were made of the same clear crystal as everything else, but without the usual glow. They were hard to see. Marcus used his flashlight to guide his way up. On the third floor, he heard the sound of fighting above. There were shouts in the Zephyrian language, mixed with the clicking sounds that hive soldiers made when they communicated. Marcus climbed faster. His military training had taught him to move quickly and quietly, even in the dark. He reached the fifth floor and could see light coming from the princess's room. The door was broken open, hanging from its crystal hinges. Marcus peered around the door frame and saw the situation inside. Princess Lyrale stood in the center of her room, still wearing her dinner dress. Round her, the air shimmered and sparked. Where her energy barrier had been, the barrier was failing, creating gaps that grew larger every second. 6 hive soldiers surrounded her. They were bigger than the diplomats Marcus had seen at dinner, with thicker armor and larger weapons. These were warriors, not negotiators. Their compound eyes reflected Marcus's flashlight beam as they slowly closed in on the princess. "Step back, alien scum!" shouted a Zephyrian guard who lay wounded near the window. "You cannot touch the princess." The lead hive soldier clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. "The barriers fail. The telepathic one will come with us. Resistance is pointless." Princess Lyrale raised her hands, and Marcus could see her concentrating hard. Suddenly, 2 of the hive soldiers stumbled and shook their heads, as if they were dizzy. She was using her telepathic powers to confuse them. But the effort was clearly hurting her. Her face was pale, and she was breathing hard. "The neural interface will make this easier," clicked another hive soldier, holding up the crystal device they had given her at dinner. "You will not resist once it is attached." That's when Marcus realized he was out of time. In a few seconds, the hive would capture the princess. The Zephyrian guards were down, and no help was coming. Marcus thought about his orders. Stay with the human delegation. Don't wander off. Don't go near the princess. They said I wasn't allowed to go past her, Marcus muttered to himself. Then he gripped his knife tighter and charged into the room. But some rules are meant to be broken. The hive soldiers froze when they saw him. No alien had ever been this close to Princess Lyrale before. For a moment, everyone in the room just stared at Marcus as he stood between the hive warriors and the princess. "Human," clicked the lead soldier. "You violate the sacred boundaries. You will be destroyed." "Get in line," Marcus said, and lunged forward with his knife. The fight was fast and desperate. Marcus had surprise on his side, but the hive soldiers had armor and numbers. His knife couldn't pierce their thick shells, so he aimed for the joints, where their armor was weaker. Behind him, Princess Lyrale continued using her telepathic powers. Marcus could feel a strange tingling in his mind, but it didn't hurt like it did for the hive soldiers. Her mental attacks made them slow and clumsy, giving Marcus the advantage he needed. Marcus managed to disable the soldiers before the others adapted to the princess's mental attacks. They started wearing special helmets that protected their minds. Now Marcus was facing for armed soldiers with only a small knife. "Marcus," Princess Lyrale called out, "I cannot hold them much longer." One of the hive soldiers raised a weapon that looked like a crystal rifle. It was aimed directly at the princess. Marcus threw himself sideways, knocking her out of the Wait just as the weapon fired. The blast left a smoking hole in the crystal wall where she had been standing. Marcus helped the princess to her feet. More hive soldiers were coming up the stairs. He could hear their clicking voices getting closer. The room had only one exit, and it was blocked. The balcony, Princess Lyrale said, pointing toward the large window that opened onto her private balcony. Marcus looked outside. The balcony was high up, with no obvious way down. But staying here meant certain capture. Can you climb? Marcus asked. I have never tried, the princess admitted. Today's a good day to learn. Marcus smashed the window with his knife handle, clearing away the crystal shards. The hive soldiers were almost at the door. He could see their shadows moving in the hallway. Princess Lyrale looked at Marcus with her large silver eyes. There was fear there, but also determination. She reached out and grabbed his hand with surprising strength. Run, she said. Together, they jumped through the window onto the balcony, just as the hive soldiers burst into the room behind them. Marcus and Princess Lyrale landed hard on the crystal platform outside her balcony. The princess's dress tore as she rolled, but she got to her feet quickly, above them. Angry clicking sounds came from her room as the hive soldiers realized their targets had escaped. This way, Marcus whispered, pulling the princess toward the edge of the platform. Looking down, Marcus could see crystal vines growing along the tower wall. They looked strong enough to hold their weight, but climbing down would be slow and dangerous. The hive soldiers would spot them easily. Wait, Princess Lyrale said, placing her hand on Marcus's arm. I can sense their minds. There are more soldiers coming up the stairs, but also, she paused, concentrating. There are hive forces throughout the palace. This is not just about capturing me. Marcus felt a chill. How many? Too many, the princess said. They have been planning this for months. The peace talks were just a cover. They want to take control of the entire palace. Suddenly, the crystal vines near them started moving. Marcus grabbed the princess and pulled her back just as a hive drone emerged from the vines. It was one of the small scout drones he had seen in the gardens, but now it had weapons attached. The drone fired a blue energy blast that missed them by inches. Marcus threw his knife at it, and the blade struck the drone's wing. It spun out of control and crashed into the tower wall. They're everywhere, Marcus said. We need to find another way. Princess Lyrale closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, the communications center. She said suddenly, in the East Tower, if we can get there, I can send warnings to other worlds. Other worlds? Marcus asked as they carefully moved along the narrow platform that connected different parts of the palace. The Hive has planned similar attacks on 12 different planets, the princess explained. I can sense the knowledge in their leaders' minds. All the attacks will happen tonight. At the same time, Marcus stopped walking. The situation was much worse than he had thought. This wasn't just about one princess or one planet. The Hive was starting a war across the galaxy. Can you really send messages to other worlds? Marcus asked, with the palace communication array. Yes, the princess said, but I have never tried to reach so far. It might hurt me. Marcus looked at her determined expression. Despite being raised in isolation, protected from everything, she was willing to risk her life to save others. That took real courage. Then we get you to that communication center, Marcus said. They climbed through a window into another part of the palace. This section was darker, with fewer crystal lights. Marcus used his flashlight to guide them through corridors filled with beautiful artwork and statues. I have never walked through these halls before, Princess Lyrale said quietly. I was always carried in a floating chair, inside my energy barrier. How does it feel? Marcus asked, keeping watch for enemies. Strange, frightening, but also exciting, she admitted. I can sense so much more when I'm not protected by barriers. Your thoughts, for example. They are very loud and very focused. Marcus felt embarrassed. Sorry, I'm not used to telepaths reading my mind. Do not apologize. The princess said, your thoughts are refreshing. Most minds I touch are filled with fear or desire for power. Yours is filled with purpose and concern for others. They reached a junction where three corridors met. Marcus held up his hand for silence. He could hear footsteps coming from the left corridor, heavy, clicking footsteps that meant Hive soldiers. This way, Marcus whispered, leading them down the right corridor. As they moved, Princess Lyrale kept her hand on Marcus's shoulder. I can sense their locations through the walls, she said softly. There are 2 soldiers 50 meters ahead, and more coming from behind us. Marcus had never worked with a telepath before, but he quickly saw the advantages. Her mental abilities combined with his military training made them an effective team. Can you confuse them like you did in your room? Marcus asked. Yes, but not for long. And each time I use my powers, they learn to defend against them better. They reached another window and Marcus looked outside. The east tower was visible across the courtyard, but Hive soldiers patrolled the area. Getting there would be dangerous. I have an idea, Marcus said. But you're not going to like it. Tell me, we go through the main hall. It's the last place they'll expect us to be. Princess Lyrale stared at him. That is where all the diplomats are staying. If the Hive sees us there, they'll think we're trying to reach the other humans for help, Marcus finished. They won't expect us to go right past them to the communications center. That is very risky. The best plans usually are, Marcus said with a small smile. They made their way toward the main hall, avoiding Hive patrols with the princess's telepathic early warning system. Marcus was impressed by how quickly she adapted to moving quietly and staying in shadows. For someone who had lived her whole life in protected isolation, she was learning fast, Marcus. The princess said as they hid behind a crystal statue. Why are you helping me? Your people have no special reason to care about Zephyrians. Marcus thought about the question. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if the Hive succeeds tonight, a lot of innocent people on 12 different worlds are going to suffer. But you are risking your life for people you have never met. That's what humans do, Marcus said simply. We help others, even when it's dangerous. The princess was quiet for a moment. I am beginning to understand why the galaxy needs humans. You think differently than other species. They reached the entrance to the main hall. Through the crystal doors, they could see Hive soldiers searching room by room, looking for them. Marcus counted at least 8 soldiers in sight, with probably more nearby. Ready? Marcus asked. Princess Lyrale took a deep breath and nodded. Ready. Together, they slipped into the main hall, beginning the most dangerous part of their journey to the communications center. Marcus and Princess Lyrale moved through the main hall like shadows. The crystal walls around them reflected the flashlight beams of searching Hive soldiers, creating dancing patterns of light. They stayed low behind the elegant furniture, moving from one hiding spot to another. 3 soldiers ahead, the princess whispered, her hand on Marcus's shoulder. They are checking the diplomat quarters. Marcus nodded. Through a gap in the crystal decorations, he could see the Hive soldiers breaking down doors. They were searching for something specific, probably him and the princess. 2 more coming from the left corridor, Princess Lyrale added softly. Marcus looked around for another route. The communications center was just across the hall. But getting there meant crossing an open area where they would be easily seen. Can you create a distraction? Marcus asked quietly. Yes, but it will use much of my strength. The princess warned. Do it. Princess Lyrale closed her eyes and concentrated. Suddenly, all the Hive soldiers in the hall stopped moving. They shook their heads and looked around in confusion, as if they had forgotten what they were doing. Now, the princess whispered. They ran across the open space while the soldiers were distracted. Marcus reached the communications center door first and tried to open it. The door was locked with both mechanical and electronic systems. Stand back, Marcus said. Pulling out his knife. Wait, Princess Lyrale said. She placed her hand on the door's control panel and closed her eyes. The door clicked open immediately. Telepathic lock-picking? Marcus asked, impressed. Everything has a mind of some kind, the princess said with a small smile. Even machines. Inside the communications center, walls of crystal screens showed star maps and communication channels. The equipment was far more advanced than anything Marcus had seen before. In the center of the room was a large chair surrounded by glowing panels. "This is the telepathic amplifier," Princess Lyrale explained. "It will boost my mental abilities across the galaxy." But what?" Marcus asked, though he could see the worry in her silver eyes. "The strain might kill me," she said simply. "I have never attempted anything like this before." Marcus felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, after seeing her courage and determination, the thought of losing her was terrible. "There has to be another way," Marcus said. "There is no time," the princess replied. "Every moment we wait, more hive forces arrive on other worlds." She moved to the chair and began connecting crystal cables to her head. The equipment hummed to life, and Marcus could feel energy building in the air around them. "The attacks are beginning," Princess Lyrale said, her voice becoming distant. "I can sense them across space. 12 worlds, millions of innocent lives." Marcus looked at the star map on the main screen. Red dots appeared one by one, marking the worlds under attack: human colonies, Zephyrian outposts, trading stations full of peaceful families. "I can reach them," the princess said, her voice growing stronger. "But I need more power. The amplifier is not enough." Marcus studied the control panels around the chair. Most of the symbols were in Zephyrian, but some were universal. Power settings, amplification levels, transmission strength. "What if we overload the system?" Marcus suggested. "Push it beyond safe limits?" "That would certainly give me enough power," the princess said. "But it would also destroy the communications center, and probably—" She didn't finish the sentence. "And probably kill you," Marcus said quietly. "Yes?" Marcus looked at her sitting in the chair, surrounded by glowing crystal technology. She was so young, and she had already lived her whole life trapped by other people's fears. Now she was willing to die to save people she had never met. "There's another option," Marcus said suddenly. "What if we share the load?" "What do you mean?" "You said humans think loudly. What if you use my mind as a secondary transmitter? Spread the mental strain between us." Princess Lyrale stared at him. "That is theoretically possible, but the connection would be permanent. Our minds would be linked forever. I can live with that." Marcus said without hesitation. "You do not understand. You would feel everything I feel. Think everything I think. Your human mind might not survive the connection." Marcus thought about all the people on 12 different worlds who were counting on them: children, families, entire civilizations that would fall to the hive if they failed. "Let's do it," Marcus said. The princess nodded and gestured to a smaller chair next to hers. Marcus sat down as she connected more crystal cables to his head. The moment the connection activated, Marcus felt his mind expand beyond anything he had ever imagined. Suddenly, he could sense minds across the galaxy. Millions of thoughts, fears, and hopes flowed through his consciousness. It was overwhelming, but the princess's presence in his mind helped him focus. Together, they reached out to the 12 worlds under attack. Marcus felt the princess's telepathic voice carrying their warning across impossible distances. "Hive, invasion, defend yourselves. Help is coming." One by one, the red dots on the star map began to change. Emergency defenses activated. Military forces responded. Civilian populations evacuated to safety. "It's working," Marcus said, though speaking was difficult with so many thoughts flowing through his mind. That's when the communications center door exploded inward. Hive soldiers poured into the room, led by their largest warrior. This one was different from the others, bigger, with more armor and weapons that crackle with energy. The telepathic transmissions end now, the commander clicked. "You have interfered with our plans for the last time." Marcus stood up, pulling the cables from his head. The mental connection with the princess remained, but weaker now. He could still feel her maintaining the warning transmissions, using the last of her strength. "You want to stop the transmissions," Marcus said. "Stepping between the Hive commander and the princess, you'll have to go through me first." The Hive commander raised his weapon. "One human against 12 warriors. You cannot win." Marcus smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but I can slow you down long enough for her to finish. The battle was fierce but brief. Marcus used every trick his military training had taught him, but he was vastly outnumbered. Still, he fought with desperate determination, knowing that every second counted. When the Hive warriors finally overwhelmed him, Marcus collapsed near the princess's chair. Blood ran from several wounds, and his vision was growing dark. The transmissions are complete, Princess Lyrali said weakly. All 12 worlds have been warned. Their defenses are ready. The Hive commander raised his weapon for a final shot, but before he could fire, the communications center filled with silver light. Zephyrian reinforcements had finally arrived. Led by the Chancellor himself, "Stand down, Hive forces," the Chancellor commanded. "Your invasion has failed." As the battle ended and medics rushed to help Marcus and the princess, Marcus felt a sense of deep satisfaction. They had done it. 12 worlds were safe because one human had been willing to break the rules, and one princess had been brave enough to trust him. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the same crystal hall where the peace talks had begun. This time, the negotiations were real. The Hive's failed invasion had united the galaxy against them, and true alliances were being formed. Princess Lyrali approached him, walking freely without any energy barriers. The mental link they shared had changed them both, but in good ways. She was stronger and more confident, while Marcus had gained a deeper understanding of other species. "Ready for our next mission?" the princess asked with a smile. Marcus nodded. Their partnership had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic defense, one based on cooperation rather than isolation. "Let's go save the galaxy," Marcus said again.